This meatloaf is one of my boys' favorites. It was a recipe that my mom gave to me. It used to be one of our favorites growing up. And ever since I made it for the first time, it's a highly requested meal in our house. So. All right, so we're making supper. Tonight, making mashed potatoes, meatloaf, macaroni and cheese, and peas. Starting off by peeling some Yukon Gold potatoes. Feeding a family of 4, so I'll probably peel 8 to 10 potatoes. Cut them into 1-inch to 1.5 inch chunks. When I get done peeling them all, and we'll boil them till they're fork tender. And then add milk, butter, salt, and pepper, and mash them to a whipped consistency. So. All right, so you cut off the top end, cut the onion in half, leave the root end on it. So that when you slice it to dice it, it keeps the onion together. You just want to peel off the skin on both halves of the onion. And we'll take the onion to the cutting board. Add some olive oil to a frying pan. About 3 or 4 tablespoons. And then add our onion to that. And then we'll saute that until it's translucent. And we'll add it to our meat mixture. Potatoes. Try and get them in 1-inch or so chunks. We'll do that with all of our potatoes and then cover with enough water to cover. I want to add some kosher salt to the potatoes. And turn them on to a high medium heat to let them boil. Once they come to a boil, turn it down to a simmer for about 15-20 minutes till fork tender. All right, so we're going to make the meatloaf now. Start off with some farm-raised ground beef. We're doing a rather big meatloaf, so we're doing 3 pounds of meat. It's got our trash bowl over here. We thawed this meat out in the refrigerator. About an 80-20 ground beef. We're going to need a couple of eggs for binder. Crack those into a separate bowl. We'll mix those together, just kind of scramble them a bit to get the yolks and the whites combined. I'm going to add that to the ground beef. I'm going to get rid of this bowl now. You use something for a filler, breadcrumbs. I prefer to use Ritz crackers. I use everything Ritz. You could use saltines. The nice thing about these everything Ritz is you can just crush them in the sleeve. Once you've got them crushed up, just open them up and add them to the mixture. We'll do that with a second pack. We'll not only add a cup to the meat, but when we form the meatloaf, we'll then top it with ketchup. And then for some added moisture, we'll go with about a cup of milk. Once we got all of our ingredients in the bowl, it's just time to get the hands dirty and mix it all together. You'll notice I didn't add any salt or pepper to this, and that's because of everything Ritz has salt, pepper, garlic, various other seasonings in it. The oven to 350 degrees. Once the oven's preheated, we'll be putting our meatloaf in the oven for an hour and 15 to an hour and 30 minutes. You can see I just got a cookie sheet here. I'm going to pour my meat mixture out onto a cookie sheet. I prefer to use a cookie sheet rather than a loaf pan. I form my loaf. That lets the exterior of your meatloaf get a nice crust. So once I've got it formed into a loaf on my pan, I'm just going to get me some ketchup. Squeeze some ketchup over the top. And I'm just going to use my hand and smear it to try and get a nice even coating of ketchup on it. And this will act as a glaze while it cooks. To open these, I like to drain off all the liquid, and I'll just add some butter to these when I cook them. Just pour those in a bowl, bring them over here. I like to use real butter, the salted variety. About a tablespoon and a half. And we'll just pop those in the microwave about the last 2-3 minutes before the meal's ready. All right, our oven's preheated to 350 degrees. We're going to put the meatloaf in uncovered on the center rack, and we'll set the timer for an hour. We'll check that at an hour. It may need to go for another 15 to 30 minutes, but we'll start with an hour and see what it looks like. We got our garlic knots on a cookie sheet. We're going to put them in a 425 degree oven for about 6 to 7 minutes on the center rack there. Got 2 quarts of boiling water. We're going to dump our macaroni in. We're going to add a little olive oil to keep the noodles from sticking as it boils. Just give that a quick stir. We're going to just put a little kosher salt in there to salt our pasta. Those noodles cook for about 11 minutes, and then we'll strain and add the cheese. So we're going to drain our potatoes. They're nice and fork tender. Try and get all that water out of there. We like buttery mashed potatoes, so we're going to add a stick of butter and about a cup of milk. We'll keep the milk out just so we can add to it if we need them creamier. All right, so the potatoes have a rough mash to them. We're just going to cover those and put them over on the table. Our macaroni's got about 5 minutes left to cook, and then we'll drain it and add the cheese. Take a check on our rolls. Looks like they're coming along nicely. Have maybe a minute left. All right, so we're just going to put the rolls over here in a basket, get those ready for serving. Get our peas out of the microwave. Plate so's on the table. A little stir. Give our macaroni a check. We're going to add some white cheddar to the macaroni. Everything's mixed good and we'll move it to the table. Get everything uncovered. And there you have it. Grandma Schommer's meatloaf, mashed potatoes, macaroni, peas, and dinner rolls. Now,
this can just be the B-roll part that we cut to. As you see, good. Mm. Always on the gas, maybe. 2.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now pause.
Generally, when you hear the term meatloaf, you think of nasty school food, but when it comes to this meatloaf, this is 5-star restaurant quality. So good.